Hi, welcome to the September 5th, 2024 regular Board of Education meeting. We'll start with item 1, open session. Item A, call to order and roll call. Superintendent, will you call roll?
Mr. Clark.
Here.
Ms. Larrett.
Here.
Ms. Lofthouse.
Here.
Mr. Reed.
Here.
Mr. Huey.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. In a moment, we'll be recessing a closed session where we will discuss any of the following: student matters, employer-employee relations, conference with legal counsel, conference with real property negotiators, and personnel matters. Employer-employee relations will include an employee discipline matter. I see no public comments for closed session items. We have none online, so that moves to item C, which is public comments. We don't have any of those, in which case we will recess closed session and be back at 6 p.m. All right, welcome back to open session of the September 5th, 2024 FCUSD Board of Education meeting. We're back in open session, which is item 4A, call back to order. We will start with our land acknowledgement and Pledge of Allegiance.
As the Folsom Cordova Unified School District, we acknowledge that our administrative facilities and schools occupy the unceded territory of the Nishinan and Miwok, the original people of the skies, land, and waters, where we work and learn.
We also recognize the presence and ancestral stewardship of the Nishinan ancestral tribes of the Esto, Notamus, and Nisim Pewanan to the north.
And the Miwok ancestral tribes, the Amakumne, the Consumne, Halpumne, and Makulumene to the south along the Great Sacramento River system since time immemorial.
We understand that this land upon which our institutions are built was once flourishing with natural resources and sustained by the ancestral knowledge and practices of these indigenous communities.
We acknowledge the injustices of colonialism and attempted genocide that have impacted these communities and recognize the resilience of their descendants who continue to thrive today.
In our daily endeavors of teaching, learning, leadership, and community engagement, we commit to supporting, respecting, and honoring their culture, traditions, and life ways.
We pledge to work together for the evolving vision of the Miwok and Nishinan, especially all future generations.
All right, thank you, Board. If you'll join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. That moves us on to item C, broadcast statement. A broadcast and recording is being made at the direction of the board, and the broadcast may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. Folsom Cordova Unified School District Board Policy 1313 promotes mutual respect, civility, and orderly conduct among employees, parents, and the public. We will treat staff, parents, and members of the public with respect and ask the same in return. If any member of the public uses obscenities or communicates in a demanding, loud, insulting, and/or demeaning manner, the board will calmly and politely admonish the person to communicate civilly. Public comments during board meetings are an important component of public engagement and transparency. Members of the public will not be permitted to yield their speaking time to another member of the public. Per the Brown Act, the board is not allowed to enter into a two-way discussion on any matter not on the agenda. Then on to item D, roll call. Superintendent?
Ms. George.
Here.
Mr. Merrill.
Here.
Mr. Clark.
Here.
Ms. Larrett.
Here.
Ms. Lofthouse.
Here.
Mr. Reed.
Here.
Mr. Huey.
Here.
All are present.
Thank you. Moves us on to item 5, reporting out of closed session. I believe we have nothing to report out of closed session tonight. So we'll move on to item 6, adoption of agenda. Just want to make a note before we do that, that this agenda has been moved around compared to our typical agenda. So starting tonight, we do plan on having agenda consent really right after we come back into open session. The theory of that is typically we have people that we are introducing to the district, new employees or admin, and oftentimes them and their families are here to celebrate that, and we just want to be able to honor that as soon as we come out of closed session. So we'll be doing that. tonight, I don't think we have that situation, but in the future, we believe that we will. So adoption of agenda, is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll move it.
Motion by Mr. Clark. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Lofthouse. Superintendent?
Ms. George?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. Larrett?
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. And then on to item 7, agenda consent. Before we vote on that, I believe we're going to be pulling 2 items from the agenda tonight. Item C, approve memorandum of understanding with Cordova Community Council Foundation for Rancho Cordova Athletic Association Youth Sports. And item D, approve extended field trip request, Folsom High Jazz class to the Education Network Conference in Atlanta, Georgia. So is there a motion to approve the agenda consent with the exceptions of items C and D?
I'll move.
Motion by Ms. Larrett. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Clark. Superintendent?
Ms. George?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. Larrett?
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Typically, we would move on to those items right away. We're going to wait until discussion action. So we'll be there shortly to approve those or to discuss those 2 items. So that moves us on to item 8, special presentations. We do not have any from the students or the staff. So we'll move on to item 9, public comment. Time will be given to speakers at the discretion of the board chairperson. The law allows the public to address the board on any matter not on the agenda, but the law prohibits action by the board on non-agenda items. It looks like we do have a few in-person comments. I was going to mention to Mr. Smith, we did get your card for the field trip. We'll wait till the discussion action item for that, if that works for you. So in that case, then, we'll start with Jeanette Sansabach.
So as my public comment was on behalf of Joanne Brausch. So this is a statement from Joanne Brausch. She had a family emergency or she would have been here in person herself. First, a caveat. This statement is her viewpoint and does not necessarily represent the entire Traffic Safety Committee. She wanted to be here tonight because as a member of City Council, appointed member at large of the Traffic Safety Committee, charged with pedestrian bicyclist safety. She is frustrated that the safety does not appear to be at the forefront of everybody's mind. The fact that Mr. Matt Washburn sits on the Traffic Committee does not ever bring items to this nature to the attention of the committee is of great concern to her. High on her list of the current examples of these situations that exist on the first day of school in 2024-25, a bus route stop on Sycamore Creek Way at or near Mangini Way, which requires students who live on the south side to cross Mangini Way, where there are no stop signs or sidewalks to aid them or keep them safe as they go. And a myriad of missing safety items surrounding ACE, Alder Creek. In light of this, now nearly 2 years of observing these challenges surrounding your campuses, she felt the need to respectfully request the change in process from this body. Her ask, FCUSD, every time you break ground on a school or develop a new amended bus route, can you please be a good partner, neighbor, and an advocate for the student safety by engaging the proper city departments early in the process to have them install all necessary safety countermeasures prior to the opening of said school or implementing said bus routes. Citizens, parents, council members shouldn't have to be intervening, beg the TSC after the fact to get signals, stop signs, and crosswalks, etc. installed, especially when we should have already known that these items would be necessary. In conclusion, collectively, as public entities, we need to make sure these things are properly analyzed and mitigated. We need to make certain that we are working together way more proactively in these situations. We need to end this practice of being merely reactive. We can and should and do better, plan earlier, and work smarter for the benefit, but more importantly, for the safety of FCUSD students. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeanette and Joanne. Faith Smith and then Earl as well. Welcome, Faith.
Hi, my name is Faith Smith, and I spoke last board meeting. Last Friday, I auditioned for the American River Community College Jazz Choir. Their jazz choir is one of the top community college jazz choirs in Northern America. Everyone I have told that I was going to audition said that the music program in general at American River is amazing. Not just good, amazing. On Labor Day, I found out that I made the jazz choir there. This is the third college jazz choir that I have auditioned for and got in. So I'm going to ask the same question that I've been asking since the beginning. Why am I being denied from the Folsom High School Jazz Choir? I've auditioned 3 times, which means it has been almost 3 years, and I am still asking the same question. I'm getting into college jazz choirs, and yet I'm being told that I'm not good enough for the Folsom High School Jazz Choir. I know this is not a coincidence, and I know that this is an act of retaliation. So, Mr. Swanson, will you allow the retaliation to continue? Thank you.
Thank you, Faith. Earl. Welcome.
Board, Mr. Swanson. 3 years ago, when Faith auditioned for the jazz choir at Folsom High, I didn't make a fuss that she was not accepted. But I did make a fuss at the demand from the jazz teacher that everyone give money. It was placed at us as a requirement. I later found out in 2013 that the Booster Club, the Jazz Booster Club, was sued for the same reason and lost. I filed a uniform complaint specifically for that and for specifically this jazz teacher putting Faith in a closet. And now she's continuing to be denied. Voice is my primary instrument in college. I've worked with the DeBarge brothers. I've Stevie Wonder. There's countless people I've worked with. I'm a specialist in the voice. I too auditioned for the ARC Jazz Choir. Of course, I would be accepted since I do have a degree in this. But to my shocking, as I received the music, Nice and Easy, commissioned by Folsom High School Jazz Choir, Curtis Gazer, director, 2015. This is what the money is being used for. Didn't he retire? But yet, I'm at a community college and I'm seeing his name promoting the school. He didn't write it. He didn't arrange it. So with that in mind, I've been meeting with the board members and I've had great discussions, especially with Mr. Reed. We've had a lot of meetings and met with a lot of people in the district. How many employees is in this district? Quite a few. 250 million a year budget? That's a major corporation. Why do we have a teacher in charge of HR? And we look at all the racial stuff that happens in this district. When a teacher is bold enough to stand up on the top of a black student and slap him in the face, that's an HR issue, isn't it? When a student, my daughter, is dealing with retaliation when a teacher tells color guard that we're canceling color guard for the spring because a parent and a child or a student is suing her, and they all name our name. I file no lawsuit. I know how to. I've considered it, but I haven't. These are, once again, HR issues. Can HR really deal with serious issues like this, who can have serious repercussion when the HR person went to school to be a teacher? I think we need to look out and hire someone. I'm not saying fire someone. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying to retaliate either. But what I am saying is we need to have someone who's qualified to handle HR with a business. You might as well call it a business with 250 million. And how many employees? That seems to be that is the complaint of the community. When we look at how many...
Mr. Smith, if you could work to wrap it up.
I'm almost done. How many, the changes of how many new homes in the area and people moving into the area, and how many low-cost living has been improved by the district or the city, is we're going to deal with a new demographic in this area. We need somebody who can actually handle the voice of the community versus the old ways of the district. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and again, Mr. Smith, I'll have your card for the next item once we get to it. Appreciate it. That's all the in-person public comments we have. We have any online? Looks like we do have one online. Oh,
Can I share something with you real quick?
yes. All right. So a little point of order, we're learning after switching around the agenda, but with pulling some consent agenda items, we actually do need to cover those items under consent agenda. So we're going to go back, or consent agenda. We're going to go backwards to those items C and D right now. So we're going to start with item C, which is approve memorandum of understanding with Cordova Community Council Foundation for Rancho Cordova Athletic Association Youth Sports. Mr. Swanson?
It's my understanding, and Rochelle, please correct me if I'm wrong, that it has to be acted on. There has to be a motion to pull, and then it comes back, or do we have to have the conversation, the discussion action right now?
Traditionally, it would follow after the original motion, and then each item is pulled individually. It's actioned on individually.
To be pulled or to then be
No,
discussed and acted
one
on?
motion just to accept as is with those two being pulled.
Yep.
And then you
That's
go
right.
to each consent item individually and vote individually on each one
Great.
At that time.
at that time.
Got it.
Under
So-
the consent section.
We've jumped a little ahead. We're going to move backwards onto that item. So back to item 7, agenda consent, item C. Mr. Swanson, would you like to introduce that item?
I would be happy to. But because we're going back, I have to flip through my agenda here. There we go. Page 4, page 2, page 5. Stand by, board. There we are. Okay, so we had pulled item C, I believe, to discuss, and it's the approval of the MOU with the Cordova Community Council Foundation for a joint facility use agreement with RCAA, which is the Rancho Cordova Athletic Association Youth Sports. We pulled this specifically because it is my understanding that we wanted to vote specifically on this item. So are you just asking me to call roll or asking me to introduce the item?
No, introduce the item, and then if there are any questions or any explanations provided, we would.
Actually, no explanation. I just needed to pull this item because I need to abstain from the vote because I am the Rancho Cordova Track Club president. And so just didn't feel it would be appropriate for me to vote on that. So.
Right. So are there any questions from the board? I'm hearing none. I don't see any in person. Are there any online? No. In that case, is there a motion from the board to approve item C?
I'll move it.
Motion by Mr. Reed. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Lofthouse. Superintendent.
Ms. George?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. Larrett?
Abstain.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0 with 1 abstention.
Great, thank you. And then on to item D, approve extended field trip request, Folsom High School's Jazz Class to the Education Network Conference in Atlanta, Georgia.
I believe this is simply an approval of travel, and so I know we pulled it for a specific vote.
Yes, so entertain any questions from the board. If not, we do have a public comment. Not seeing any from the board. Mr. Smith, welcome back.
Thank you. Once again, I want to clarify, when I refer to the district, that is not including Mr. Swanson. I appreciate you being here, Mr. Swanson, and I see your action and your efforts, and I do believe you were the best person for the job. In the family court system, there's been 5 judges. 2 of the judges have mentioned that I am child-focused. So regardless of the conflict that has happened, my focus is the children. Gin is what this is called. It's a conference. People all over the United States go, and people all over the world go. This is like a carrot in our district. Only the A jazz band and the jazz choir get to go. I would like the board to consider, and Mr. Swanson, open this up for all the children that are in the jazz program. Why does only a certain selected few get to go? Whether that was selected or performing or not, they say that the families must pay the trip anyway, and the district is not providing the money for the other students to go. Let all the kids go. There are seniors that are in the B jazz band that I feel, under my degree and under my 25 years of experience working in the industry, that they should be in the jazz band A. But they're in there because they spoke for faith in the B. And so now they don't get to go to the gin. Let them go. If money is short, I want to know, because I will donate. I'll donate out of my business. Let them go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I'll bring it back to the board for any final questions or comments.
Yes, Mr. President.
Mr. Clark.
I appreciate Mr. Smith's comments, and I totally agree with them. I think, honestly, it's the experience. And those kids should be allowed. My question is, how many kids are we looking out of the B group that are eligible to go?
Anybody can go. I can pay for a flight to go. Anybody can go to this.
Right.
So, Mr. Smith, sorry to interrupt. I'm just going to ask that if we do have questions that are directed to the district staff.
Okay.
So if that can be answered.
I'll direct it to the district staff then.
I don't know if we have class rosters right now. Is there anyone that can pull up class rosters to see how many people are in B?
Not quickly, but yes, we could get the class roster. I think there's other issues too, though, that I'm not aware of. One of my concerns is that in terms of engaging in this conversation, that the teacher is not involved in the conversation. I don't know if there are requirements. It doesn't sound like there are, but I have no idea. And so that is a little bit of a concern in terms of a lot of times, there are reasons that some students go and some do not. And since I wasn't aware that this was coming forward, I don't have any materials, to kind of answer anything accurately.
So Trustee Clark, we can get that information and get that to the board.
Maybe it might be a good idea to bring this back until we get some data. One, if the district's not paying for it and it's coming out of pocket, I don't see, why parents can't pay for their kids to go. Or if it's a capacity issue with the hotel. I don't know. I mean, we're looking at what, January? Yeah, we're looking at January. So maybe we can bring this back by next meeting and vote on it then.
I'm wondering, sorry to interrupt, Mr. Clark, if we could vote on it tonight, but then if we do want more students to come, we could always bring another item back requesting the further students.
Okay, what would be the timeline on that?
Well, if we're looking at the next meeting, then
Would it be the next meeting?
I guess that would be up to a board member to ask for that during,
Okay, I'm
No.
asking for it, so can we do the next meeting?
yeah, I don't
Yeah,
see a
I mean,
problem
we
with
can
that,
vote
but
on
I
it
think we
now,
can.
but I mean,
I'm fine with what Mr. Clark is asking for.
Any other comments, questions?
Yeah, I would have to agree. I mean, on these are special events that kids get to go to. And we talk about kids can't dream what they cannot see. And so when they go to these types of events, they get those opportunities to see the possibilities. And, maybe it's more practice time, maybe it's more effort, maybe it's different things that they might want to adjust, to get to those levels. And if they don't have that opportunity to go, they don't even know that's the possibility. So if, we could get that information, because if I personally would just like to see what the issue would be to limit to only 30 students, because I've seen at Cordova High, they go to Disneyland and they take all the students, right? So if there's a way that we could do that, I prefer for that to for that to happen, you know, because with the Disneyland trip, not everyone goes because we're paying, you know, as parents, we're paying for that. So if there's a possibility for that to have that opportunity, I would hate to see it limited to just 30 if there's an opportunity to take 40, if there's an opportunity to take 45. So I would be comfortable with signing off on this tonight as long as we're having that discussion at the possibility to open this up for additional students. And if we're not, there better be a really good valid reason for why we're not doing that. So
Logistically, I'm just looking at it in terms of, and this would be a question to kind of get the answer on in terms of the 2 school personnel and 2 volunteers. If that's paid by district funds, there might be a financial impact that we would just want to see or know. And I don't think it's that great of a financial impact. However, that may be what comes back in terms of parent volunteers. And that's not to say that those parents that are paying for their child from the B band wouldn't also want to go and open up that opportunity. So I think that anybody who wants to go, and also that kind of helps out with, I think the field trip approvals oftentimes also have to do with the ADA. So making sure that those students that are attending are receiving cleared absence so that it's showing that they're at a school event. So I think that those are sort of things to weave throughout that to look at in terms of when it comes back with more information about why we can't open that up.
I'm just wondering, Dr. Huber, if we did bring this back on the September 19th meeting, is that enough time to find some information?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, I mean, if there is a motion tonight, we can approve this and request at the same time that this comes back on September 19th with some more information around what it would take to bring more students and, the financial cost as well as the personnel cost.
And then, Mr. President, if I may,
Yeah.
I just want to ask Ms. Lofthouse, so are we looking at maybe bringing on a couple of parent volunteers as well to?
There's probably a ratio that
Right.
we have to keep at for safety reasons. So I don't know that. So I tried to do the math and I'm not a math person. So, but it looks like there's 4 for the 30. So there's probably a parent-child ratio or adult to child ratio that they have to keep at.
Wondering if it's a normal California, what is it, 1 to 10? I can't remember if it's 1 to 10
Yeah, I don't know.
or 1 to 12 or something like that. I mean, heck, I'd volunteer to go. I mean,
So it looks like that would be something else where we just want some more information
Sure.
for on the next meeting. If everybody's okay, that it's really up to entertaining. If there is a motion to approve item D as well as request that on September 19th, that it comes back to us with that additional information.
I'll move that.
Okay, motion by Ms.
I'll
Lofthouse,
second.
second by Mr. Clark. Superintendent.
Ms. George,
Aye.
Mr. Merrill,
Aye.
Mr. Clark,
Aye.
Ms. Larrett,
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse,
Aye.
Mr. Reed,
Aye.
Mr. Hui.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, and appreciate the board for that discussion. Thank you, Mr. Smith, for bringing that before us. And all apologies to Rochelle for whatever you're going to have to do with the minutes tonight. So brings us to item 10, reports of district organizations, starting with the Student Advisory Board.
Hello, everybody. So I had a meeting with Dr. Jackson today. We were planning our very first SAB meeting on the next Thursday, the 12th, at Cordova High. So we're gonna have a little tour with the meeting, and we're gonna have a surprise performance at the end from our Cordova High drum line. So we're looking forward to that. We're kind of making it. We're setting the what's the word? We're setting the precedent for the next 10 SAB meetings we have. So we're hoping to show up and show out at Cordova. So show like a role model for the rest of the SAB meetings. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Thank you, Mr. Merrill. All right, California School Employees Association, Mr. Korn.
Good evening, board members, superintendent. On August 28th, we were able to CSEA ratified Article 1 TA in the differential agreement. We're both ratified that night. CSEA would like to extend their gratitude out to the benefits department for the district, benefits specialist Liz Ely, Annie DeLon, and Janine Waring were instrumental in making nonstop, and a lot of our members save money this year. They don't realize what these people have done for them, because had they not brought nonstop in, their checks would be looking a lot different right now. I'd like to also thank any staff that was involved in helping with this. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Folsom Cordova Education Association.
And I'm here to be. So good evening, family, board members, staff, and teachers who are both in person and on Zoom. Tonight, I just have a few items to update. First is the evaluation process. As you know, FCEA and FCUSD placed a hiatus on evaluations for veteran teachers of good standing to overhaul the evaluation process and to rid ourselves of the dog and pony show that doesn't prove or disprove if a teacher is reaching students and moving the needle of learning. The purpose of evaluation system is to support continued growth and improvement so that the quality of educators are attracted to and remain in the district, knowing their effectiveness will be validated and measured fairly. In that vein, last year, the evaluation 5 of myself, Tracy Sutter, Don Ogden, Lori Emington, and Angie Carlamato came together to put together a framework of what our process could be. A model more about coaching and less about checking a box, which didn't improve teaching practices or gave administrators a place to help struggling teachers. Last week, we held a short meeting where our team and now other certificated staff will be creating the nuts and bolts for the framework. There are 3 subcommittees: roles, rubrics, and the tools. Each of these subcommittees have been given goals and expectations to complete by November. In December, all of the committee members will come together to see if we have a solid plans to start the process of putting the goals and expectations into actionable contract language. After that, we will turn this over to the bargaining team and they will start that process. Additionally, in spring, we will hand what we have to unit members with different roles, such as nurses and counselors, so that these specialists can make their adjustments. This has been a heavy lift and we will continue for a few years more as we walk this path together. Secondly is the role of the neighborhood schools model of bringing students back to their home school as much as possible. There have been some bumps in the road, but I'm happy to say that all the stakeholders have been working together to smooth this path. We have a ways to go before we have rolls of gold, but I hope that we can eventually get there through much more communication and collaboration with and to all levels in this process. Lastly, we started the nonstop this month. So far, I haven't heard anything from members, and that's probably a good thing. But we are in the early days. I have hope that this program is as good as promised for all employees who took this path. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. All right, Folsom Cordova Leadership Association.
Good evening. Good evening, Superintendent Swanson, Board President Hui, and board members. As we approach the 20th day of, well, 21st actually, of the new year, I want to take a moment to reflect on the progress and emphasize the importance of continued support for our teachers and our students. Our educational leaders have shown remarkable dedication and resilience to creating, engaging, and supporting learning environments for all of our students. Their commitment to fostering both academic and social-emotional growth is truly commendable. I want to give a huge shout out to Folsom Cordova's 33 schools that have been recognized for their successful implementation of positive behavioral intervention and supports, and you guys know that's PBIS, and all of these 33 schools are doing it with fidelity. This outstanding achievement reflects Folsom Cordova's unwavering commitment to create an environment that maximizes academic and social-emotional behavioral outcomes for all students. Truly amazing. We've grown a lot of our schools, and so to have 33 recognized by the state is awesome. Also, I want to highlight the phenomenal and forward-thinking assistant principal team over at Cordova High. Among them is Dr. Freddie Castro, an IB student himself, who is truly a lifelong learner. If you guys have not met him, he is a remarkable young man. Recently, he received his Doctorate of Education from California State University, Sacramento, And he won the K-12 Research, it's a mouthful here, it's K-12 Research Outstanding Dissertation of the Year Award. So amazing. His research was centered on color retention and attrition in Title I schools. And so truly, I want to say that FCUSD and specifically Cordova High is lucky to have such an amazing educational leader. So have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. And finally, District English Learner Advisory Committee.
Ms. Cabrera is not with us this evening, but there is no report.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Huber. Okay, on to item 11, public hearing. I will gavel us into item A, Folsom Cordova Unified School District 2024-2025 proposed contract openers with Folsom Cordova Education Association to the Board of Education. Superintendent?
I'm sorry, President Hu, I think we just asked for comments at this point. Is that right?
Yes, if there's nothing else to say, and we'll entertain questions and comments during discussion action.
Yeah, I'm happy to give a description for the item. Or?
Please, yeah.
Yeah. So the next two items are what are called the sunshine openers between our district and the bargaining units. And so we're gaveling into the hearing, and then we're going to take action on those items. I wonder, Don Ogden, is there anything else that I'm missing on those two? All right, perfect.
Okay, very good. All right, we'll gavel out of item A, gavel into item B. Folsom Cordova Education Association 2024-2025 Sunshine Openers. Be the same explanation for item B as well.
Thank you, sir.
And,
yes.
We will be on to discussion action right now as I gavel out of item B. All right, back into discussion action, item 12. Item A, accept Folsom Cordova Unified School District 2024-2025 proposed sunshine contract openers with Folsom Cordova Education Association to the Board of Education. If there are no other comments for Mr. Swanson or for Mr. Ogden, have any questions from the board on item A? I'm not seeing any. I don't see any in-person public comments. Do we have any online? There are none online. Any further comments or a motion from the board to approve item A?
I'll move.
Motion by Mr. Reed. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Larrett. Superintendent?
Ms. George?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. Larrett?
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. And then on to item B, accept Folsom Cordova Education Association 2024-2025 Sunshine Openers. Any questions from the board? Not seeing any. I don't see any in-person public comments. Are there any online? None online. In that case, any final comments or a motion to approve item B from the board?
I'll move it.
Motion by Mr. Clark,
I'll second.
second by Ms. Lofthouse. Superintendent?
Ms. George?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. Larrett?
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Great, thank you, board. Moves us on to item C, approve 2023-2024 unaudited actuals financial report. Actual revenues and expenditures reported on the annual state budget forms, general fund, and other funds for the state of California. I'll
See you,
hand it
Mr.
over.
Martin.
Good evening, board. This evening, we'll be reviewing the closing of the books for 23-24. As you can see, I'm standing to better represent the importance of this presentation this evening. And what we will be talking through is, again, focused on 23-24, which we closed in June. We are just completing, just recently completed the process to close the books, and now we will go through the audit process, which we will be providing to the board probably in January. I do, before I start, want to recognize just the work of the team. It takes a village to build and complete a budget cycle of the size that we have for Folsom Cordova. And so I just want to recognize all of our departments, payroll, accounts payable, purchasing, benefits. But I also specifically want to recognize the fiscal and budget team, Eileen, Sharon, Chris, Michelle, Megan, Janelle, Grace, Kathy, Crystal, Norma, Connie Bisbee, Linda Thurlow, our director, our executive director, and Katrina Glover, who very proudly, this was her first complete close with her completing the last button to make that happen. So I just want to recognize her role as our fiscal support manager. So We'll get into it at this point. And so this is just a little boilerplate information that, of course, what we are going to have you approve tonight is the SACS documents, the official documents that we provide to the state. What we are looking at here is a summary presentation, primarily focused on the unrestricted and the restricted general fund. But what you will see is that this information will then go on to the Sacramento County Office of Education, who will review it, and then we will also have our auditor review. So we have multiple layers of review during that process. And this is just a summary. Again, if you were to look at our standardized account code structure documents or SACS documents that we provide to the state, you will see that we have details regarding all of these areas, and that is in Fund Form 01, and then also our adopted budget, which the board took action in back in June. Continuing on, and so the next couple slides, we're just going to be focusing on comparing what we thought we would close the books with at estimated actuals compared to what the books actually closed. And just so everybody understands, estimated actuals are done when the board also does the budget for the 24-25 year. So we're talking about assumptions that we look at in April and May because we have to have all of those documents in place by the third week of May to get them out to the board for our June meetings. So there is about a month and a half, 2 months of 2.5 months actually, of activity that still has to occur. And so there is always going to be a difference between what we think is going to happen and what actually does. And so this is on the revenue side. It's broken out similar to all of our other budget documents where we're looking at comparing to revenues on the unrestricted and restricted side, and then combined is the green down below. On the unrestricted side, what I would share is we do see an increase in revenues, which is excellent. We always preferred that to be an option. A slight adjustment on our local control funding formula entitlement due to the final numbers of our attendance of our summer programs. Specifically, our special ed programs get funded throughout the summer. And so we have some adjustments related to that. Other state income, you see about $1 million increase. The majority of that is actually related to our final lottery collection. So we get allocations through the state. And so they bump up normally the fourth quarter once they actually close the books and know how many lottery tickets they sold. And we had a lot of mega billionaires or whatever, and so they sold more lottery tickets. And correspondingly, we received more funds. You also see an allocation for transportation. That's in relationship to the new transportation funding. So last 2 years, actually 23-24 was the first year of it, we're receiving 60% of our transportation home to school costs are now reimbursed the following year. So it's always a year in arrears, but they're still trying to figure out exactly that formula calculation, and so we had an adjustment at the end of the year. Local income, you see some adjustments there. The largest single item there is our interest that we're receiving. That is because at the fourth quarter, we had a larger assumption because we had larger ending fund balance. And then, of course, the interest rates have jumped dramatically from what we previously had received. On the restricted side, you actually do see the revenues decreasing. That's primarily due to the fact that these are accounts, both the federal and local income, that you see a decrease from what we thought we were going to receive in revenues. Those are accounts that are more or less balance accounts. We recognize the revenue based off of the expenditures. You're not allowed to recognize the revenue until the expenditure has occurred. So we assumed all the revenues would be spent, but at the end of the year, there's carryover in those counts, and so therefore the revenues drop, and then correspondingly, you also see expenditures dropping to balance those accounts, and that's the reason for that activity. But really the focus there would be on the unrestricted side, and we do see some additional revenues over what we anticipated at estimated actuals. Continuing on the expenditure side, same situation here. We have it broken out by unrestricted and restricted and then combined. On the unrestricted side, you do see expenditures decreasing by over what was projected by about $2 million. The majority of that is under contracted services. And really a lot of that activity is related to activities that we planned the budget to expend by June 30th, but did not occur. So purchases that will roll over in the next year. When that occurs, what ends up happening is we still have the money for it. It just falls into the ending fund balance, and then the next year we will budget it at first interim to spend that money down. On the restricted side, you see the decreases there. The big ticket item there is you see a capital outlay of about $3.7 million. That is the remaining final amounts. Mostly of it is related to our COVID funds or ESSER funds. We used the remaining funds to do HVAC projects at at several of our schools that needed updated HVACs. And so those projects, we were hoping they would be accomplished by June 30th, but the activity continued on. So this is just more of an accounting component where those expenditures will occur. They'll just be reflected in next year's budget. And those will use up the remaining COVID funds that we received. And so all of that combined, you can see that expenditures were about $9 million combined, less than what we had projected. Bringing all of that information together, you can kind of look at it as combined. You can see at estimated actuals, we were projecting on the unrestricted side about a $3 million deficit. We ended up with about a $2 million surplus. Correspondingly continuing on over, you can see on the unrestricted side, or on the restricted side, you see the same thing, about a $5 million deficit there. Instead, it's about a $600,000 increase in restricted accounts. And that's because on the restricted side, we have activities that we will post and plug into the budget for this upcoming year, and those will use on those funds. On the unrestricted side, we talked about some of the lottery revenues, some of those revenues hitting, and then on the expenditure side, some activities that will be reflected in next year's budget. So, bringing this all together, so there was an ending fund balance of about $96 million. About $48 million, or about half of it, is restricted accounts. The remaining dollars you can see broken down. About $10 million is our economic uncertainty. That's the minimum amount we have to have, so that's why that line's yellow. Everything above that are things that either the district or the board in this case has committed. So committed activities are dollars that have been allocated for very specific purposes, like textbook adoptions, technology, and you can see some of the activities there. The largest single item there is our supplemental funding. With our supplemental funding, we have about $8 million in carryover. The last 2 years, we've budgeted to deficit spend on that pot every year to try to spend that money down. But what we've actually seen is a couple of things. Not all the activities we budget for get spent, and because of open positions primarily, those types of things. But the other big one is that we've done a very good job of trying to identify our unduplicated students. And what we have seen is often the actual award has increased from what we projected the revenues to be at adopted budget, because we are able to identify more students, and also our student population is growing. So between those two reasons, that's the reason why that budget, it didn't really increase, it just was pretty much flat this year. So, but our goal is to build that into the budget so that the sites have access to those funds, and we get that budget down into a smaller amount. So those are kind of how the ending components of our fund balance work. This next slide just talks about all the other funds in the district other than the general fund. So all of those slides were the general fund. These are all the other funds we have. Starting from left to right, the student body account, or ASB account, that's actually just an accounting fund that we use to recognize all the student body activities. So at our school sites, they actually have their own checking accounts, bank accounts for student bodies. And what this is when we gather all that together, we need to recognize the revenues and expenses we're required to. And so this is all the activities. So as a district, all of our student body accounts, all of those activities do about $3 million in activity just alone. So that you can imagine, we have a student body technician now to help with that, just because every site combined has a lot of activity. Continuing on, you see charter school, adult ed, child development, all of those programs ended with a surplus for this year, and cafeteria as well. And you can see cafeteria actually had a pretty significant surplus. And that was, again, just because of the growth of the number of students and meals served. I think we're at over 12,000 lunches a day at this point in our district, which with only 22,000 students, that's a significant participation rate. Continuing on, we have our deferred maintenance. We have a transportation fund for pupil transportation equipment, which is the activity regarding the purchase of our electric buses. And so we get a grant funding for that, and then the money comes into the general fund, we transfer it over to this pot, and then we pay for the buses out of this pot. Building funds 21 through 40 are all the capital facility activities. Those are the bond proceeds. You see that that's a pretty large deficit, $23 million expenditure. That's intentional. You can see the beginning balance, ending balance is started at almost $200 million, $199 million. And that's because we have already sold the bonds. Now we have to use this pot to spend it down. So there will always be a deficit there to spend down those funds. The only time you'll see a surplus is when we sell new bonds, and then we replenish the cash flow for that. And then you see some other activities. Bond interest is just payments for all of our debt service. So that actually is handled by the county treasury, who then takes collection from the taxpayers and then pays the debt service for all of our outstanding bonds in Folsom, Cordova. And then the last one is our student care program, which is a after-school program that we provide daycare services for at a fee. And it kind of backs into our ELOP program, which is the program that provides after-school care for students, unduplicated students of need. So, continuing on, you'll see in the actual packet, I think there's about 180 pages. I'm sure we've all reviewed it. But these are the supplemental forms that speak to the different areas that are reviewed during the audit process during the year end. And then the very last slide for you guys is the timeline for the 24-25 budget. Our big next timeline for us is in October when we have our Seabeds Day. That will be huge because that's what we build, what we think our revenues will be for 24-25. And then we have our Budget Advisory Committee meetings coming up starting in November. In December will be our first interim budget, and that will be really updated with actual attendance and enrollment information, actual staffing. So it will look pretty significantly different than what we brought back in June for our adopted budget.
Question. Thank you. Questions from the board? Not seeing any. I don't see any in-person public comments. Do we have any online? Okay. Bring it back to the board for any final comments or a motion to approve the unaudited actuals.
I'll motion.
Motion by Ms. Lofthouse. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Mr. Clark. Superintendent.
Ms. George?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Ms. Larrett?
Aye.
Ms. Lofthouse?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Mr. Hui?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Martin. Then on to item 13, discussion. Item A, recommended instructional calendar for the 2025-2026 school year. I think we are handing that to Mr. Ogden. All right.
President Hui, Superintendent Swanson, and board, I wanted to give an update on the instructional calendar for next year. So last year, as you recall, we worked on basically an algorithm which we placed into the board policy. So this is the first time we've applied this algorithm. Could you please pull up the draft that we have? And what I'd like to do is talk to the board and see if we interpret it correctly or if we need to make some adjustments. We'd like to bring it to the board for action at the next meeting. One thing just to highlight off the bat is in February, we do have for the 25-26 year, we did continue the break in February. That's not actually in the board policy. That was something we were trying this year, and obviously we haven't arrived there yet to determine if that's helped us with attendance or not. One of the indicators that we have of attendance is when we have the 3-day weekends, we tend to have a higher absentee rate of both staff and students. And so the idea of February is rather than having 2 3-day weekends, having a full week off to see if we could improve attendance in February. So we'll be looking at that closely this year, and then we'll also have the 2026 year to look at that. So if I look at great job on the split screen. Wow, I like that. So on the right, we have we have basically our algorithm. On the left, we have what we tried to produce following it. So let's see if we can follow along. So the first thing we do in Folsom, Cordova is we try to start our school year on a Wednesday or Thursday. So we were able to do that. The yellow 7, that is the first day of school. That's on a Thursday. The second piece is to observe all holidays. On this, on the bottom where it says important dates, we've listed all the holidays, and all the holidays are listed in green. The next is an or. So we either do 3 or 4. So if December 25th falls on a Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, which it doesn't, December 25th on this calendar actually falls on a Thursday. So we go to the or, we go to number 4, which is if December 25th falls on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, schedule the prior week as instructional days. So my interpretation, or our staff's interpretation of that was to have the 22nd and 23rd non-instructional days, have the 25th and 24th are holidays, And then you look at New Year's is on Thursday, the 1st, and then that Friday is also a non-instructional day. So I'm hoping that aligns with how the board was looking at that to work, okay. Yeah, because this is a list, not a flow chart. So it's open for a little bit of interpretation. Spring break. Now here there's 5 and 6 both apply to spring break. And I want to hear feedback from the board. It'd be super helpful to see this interpretation. So 5 says spring break to include the first week in April with 5 school days. So if we applied that, we would have the 6th through the 9th be spring break. However, when we wrote this, we also have number 6, which is schedule Friday before and the Monday after Easter as non-instructional days. So if we do that, that's how we did this one. So rather than having this version to look at, rather than having the 6th through the 10th to follow number 6, the Friday before, which is the 3rd, and the Monday after, which is the 6th. So it's a bit conflicting there, right? And so that's something I want to bring to the board and see, going forward, or even on this one, is there a desire for us to modify this?
Yeah, Mr. President.
Mr. Reed.
Yeah, I had actually drafted this language and did not intend for paragraphs 5 and 6 to be an or. Originally, before the board approved it, we had originally had the week that April 1st fell on would be the week that's off. Mm-hmm. In conversation with FCEA, FCA had encouraged us to, because of student burnout and perhaps even teacher fatigue, to look at the first full week in April where all 5 days are in the month of April. Mm-hmm. So it gives a little bit more a break closer or later on. So there's less of a span of days before the end of spring break and the end of the school year. And then also, if you look, especially with the winter break, pushing it a little bit further back. So the intention was that it would be the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th. And then you look at paragraph 6, the Friday before or the Monday after Easter. Easter is the 5th of April, so that means the 3rd would be off. Well, the 3rd and the 6th, but the 6th is already incorporated.
Right.
So to apply this language, it should be the 3rd we have off, and then the 6th through the 10th we have off. Okay. Now, hypothetically, let's say, just for clarification, let's say Easter was super late. I don't know if it goes this late, but let's pretend it was April 19th. In that scenario, we would have had the 6th through the 10th off, and we would have had the 17th and the 20th off. So that's how...
and that would, and I understand that. And so the challenge there would be, would add 2 more days of break in the middle of the calendar, which would either push the outside days out. So again, I come forward with the board and we'd look at it and say, okay, how do we want to adjust that? So.
Right. And that might have been, if that was the scenario, that might have meant that the winter break, which is not mandated, might have been just Monday and Tuesday in that scenario.
So is that the change? Would you like that change reflected when it comes back next meeting?
I think it would be consistent.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, and that makes sense to align with the board policy for me as well.
All right.
I think we have public comment coming too.
Okay, and so that's 5 and 6. And then on 7, when Memorial Day falls on the 25th, 26th, or 27th, schedule the last day of school and graduation to occur after the observed Memorial holiday. So we do have it falling on the 25th. And so that's accurate. And then also schedule the last instructional day of the school year to occur in May or the first 2 days of June. So we have that also. We have it occurring the last day is the 28th of May.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm going to ask Mr. Reed to restate what he had mentioned about spring break.
Okay, well, so again, if you apply the board policy, paragraph 5, schedule spring break to include the first week in April with 5 school days, or 5 weekdays, I guess you could also call it. So that would be the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th, because all 5 days are in the month of April. And then with paragraph 6, schedule the Friday before and the Monday after Easter as non-instructional days in observance of Easter. So in that instance, it would be the 3rd and the 6th. The 6th is already part of the 5 days. So in that case, we would be, a spring break would be the 3rd, the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th.
And I think, if I'm thinking through this correctly, that would, if we apply both of these and Easter was after spring break 2 weeks or 2 weeks before, it would only ever add one additional day off to the calendar.
Yeah, it might.
Because we'd always have that Friday before.
Yes.
If Easter is right here. So at most, it would be 1 day. Okay.
Well, actually, it could be 2, because it's the Friday before and the Monday after.
But yeah.
But we always have the Monday after, so you're right, it would be 1. Yeah.
I'm only bringing 1 year too. I'm only bringing 25, 26.
Okay.
Not
I don't
bringing
mean
the next year.
to stop you, Mr. Ogden, if you want to keep going, but I do want to see if there's any other questions from the board. Okay.
Also included in this, we have already negotiated professional development days in 25, 26. We don't have professional development days negotiated for 26, 27. So that's one of the reasons that I think we should focus on this one, not the following year. So I wanted to bring that to the board's attention too.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no other questions from the board, and thank you for the explanations and clarifications, we do have a public comment. Jeanette Sanzabach, welcome.
Thanks. Okay. So, Mr. Ogden and I we've been talking about this, but as part of the conversation that Mr. Reed went ahead and alluded to, part of the conversation also was to break and stabilize when spring break happened, to move it away from a Christian holiday and make it more universal, so that when families and or teachers are planning a spring holiday in between, they would always know it's going to be X week.
Yeah,
and then, so in reality, because we have had in the comment about after break, we always had that Monday off. That's not necessarily true, because it's either this year or last year, we do not have the Monday off. Was it last year? Last year, we did not have the Monday off of Easter, after Easter. So it's not an always. It'd be great if we could, but I think the fact that it's in this now board policy, that it's the Friday before and the Monday after, for those of us who do go ahead and celebrate Easter, you're not going to have a absence for those children who may be traveling for those days. So, but I wanted to make sure that this was because we're trying to break it away from Easter.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I agree. Yeah, the intent of this was to make it a standardized week, so families always know when they'll have spring break, kind of like most colleges that I'm aware of too. And again, yeah, thank you for that clarification. That Friday and Monday certainly is there are going to be travel days for a lot of families, and we want to honor that. So, well, it sounds good. If there's no other comments, it sounds like what we would ask for is for this to come back with that change from that break from the 6th through the 10th, with that Monday before off as well.
I want to thank the board. This board policy made this the smoothest calendar we've ever brought to the board. So thank you.
It's our shortest discussion by about an hour and a half, I think.
It honestly is.
So, yeah.
I would ask, is it okay to put this on consent?
Any objections to that from the board? Yeah, that sounds great. So yeah, with that change from the break from April 3rd and then the 6th through the 10th, it comes back that way. Consent agenda is great.
I do have one question, President Hui, for the board. I believe the way it's been explained, we're going to need to add one instructional day to the calendar because we're removing the Friday.
We're moving it to we're okay. It will be the same amount of days. The way he's explained it, we're going from, let me look at my notes here. We're moving it from a Monday to a Friday. And that Monday will no longer be, it'll be the whole week. So rather than
flipping the Monday and the Friday, you're right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, we're good.
And it fulfills the board policy, just inherently that it's during that week, that Monday after Easter. Okay, well, thank you, board. That was helpful. Ms. Reed, thanks for your work as well on this
Thanks, Don.
board policy. It does make it much more helpful. So that takes us to item 14, information, Folsom Cordova Unified School District Vital Signs Data Report. I think we're going to Dr. Huber for this one.
Good evening. As we have traveled this road of data that we've been on the last few years together, this is our fall report that actually looks backward a little bit because this kind of sums up where we ended up the school year, and we were compiling that data from our spring semester last year. And so that's the data we'll be sharing out this evening. One of the first things I want to do is really thank our data team that has come together. We are really becoming a district that is a lot better at both pulling data together quickly that can be used in real time. The policies and the way we used to approach data a long time ago was we basically waited till the end of the year and actually waited into the next year because that would be the CASP data. And then we would kind of somewhat react to that in terms of trying to address the concerns or issues or challenges that the district would be having. And that has really changed over the last few years. And so I just want to call out Pam Oyen, Kevin Smith, Kay Malhai-Huser, Maggie Kunin, Julie Warner, Dr. Ayanna Peace, Kate Hazarian, Angie Carlamagno, Lori Emmington, and Scott Meyer. They make up the core team that really digs into the data as we bring forward information that helps us react again in both real time as well as look back in terms of where were we in terms of this report, where we ended last year. So again, in terms of this report, what we're focusing on is the interconnectedness of SEL, attendance, behavior, and academics. This is really those core areas that kind of come together, and they have a lot of influence and impact on each other. Again, as we always like to say as well, we really want to use data as a flashlight, right? We want data to shine in terms of areas where we might have challenges or areas where there are specific needs, and that we react in a timely manner. So in terms of academics, what we're focusing on this year is the students that were able to make up credit recovery in the course of this last year. And this is credit recovery that students are taking while they're taking their regular coursework during the school year. We obviously also have credit recovery during our summer school program. We'll have a report coming to the board as also another information item next month in terms of summarizing where things ended up with summer school and that credit recovery report. But this report focuses on the credit recovery that students participated in throughout the school year. As you can see, we had really good participation in terms of the number of students that took credit recovery opportunities and some good success in terms of students who are able to finish credit recovery both towards getting them back on track for graduation or simply being able to graduate this past year with their class.
Go ahead, Mr. Reed. If you could go back to...
Yep.
Yeah. I believe I know the answer, but the reason why we don't see Vista Del Lago is the nature of their block schedule. They basically have credit recovery built right into their calendar. Is that right?
That's correct. Because Vista Del Lago is on the 4x4, they basically have the opportunity for two different classes throughout the year. And so lots of opportunities to retake a class if necessary to make up that credit.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Thank you.
You bet. So in terms of the GLOWs and GROWs, 90% of the program participants successfully did earn credit, and 87% of the program participants who are still enrolled in FCUSD schools, are still enrolled in our schools, are back on track. So they will be graduating this year with their classmates. We did have 66 students that ended with their diplomas in May. Again, with their classmates, they did not have to go to summer school to make up the credits. And we had 11 seniors that actually were able to elevate themselves into A through G completers, which is great. One of the things in terms of our GROWs that we're working on is we are looking towards eliminating summer school. And so one of the challenges for us as a district is providing those resources to ensure that kids have those credit recovery opportunities throughout the school year. And there is a challenge in terms of credit recovery during the school year because any way you cut it, a student is still fully engaged in all their classes, and then they're taking on extra coursework to recapture those credits. But summer school, there's a couple reasons in terms of summer school. One of them simply is we look like we're heading into some tight budgetary times. And so as in years past, we've had to cut back summer school programs because of that. Summer school is not required, nor do we get any ADA or funding for the state for summer school. And so as we head into maybe a tighter budget, that's something that has to be considered. Also, we do know in terms of colleges, a lot of colleges frown upon credits that are recovered in summer school because the period of time is shorter. And so colleges just question in terms of how much was actually completed in that shorter window. And so that's always been something that has been, shared by various colleges in terms of a lot of times somebody who has a summer school grade on their transcript, that could quote unquote break the tie. It's one of the ways the counselor explained it to me in terms of admission. If we're trying to figure out which student gets into the college, the student that got the credit during the regular school year would get into the college rather than the student that got that same credit through summer school, if they're in a, like I said, tie situation. So that's been expressed a few times over the last few years. And so that's in regard to summer school.
Quick question. For the credit recovery, are we still using Ingenuity?
No, we're using Apex.
Okay.
And I believe that our contract with Apex is up this year.
Okay.
And so this year we will be back into looking at all the different vendors. As usual, we usually end up with 3 to 4 vendors. We ask them to come out, they show their product. We have a pilot program. Our teachers kind of go through what they're offering. And then we'll be right back where we were 5 years ago, where we will decide on possibly a new vendor for credit recovery, or we would stick with Apex. So, but it is up this year.
And so students that are in credit recovery classes throughout the school year kind of just log on self-paced, right? It's asynchronous and...
Yeah, and they have a credentialed teacher that is helping facilitate that. It's also important to note that, remember, in credit recovery, they don't have to repeat the entire class, right? They're going through and recapturing basically essential standards to show mastery of essential standards. And so that's why, in terms of credit recovery, the highest grade that we allow for credit recovery is a C, because they're not going back and retaking the whole class. They're just going back and taking the portions that they need to show mastery.
So thinking in terms of David's question as well, with the 4x4, that gives the opportunity in the school schedule to do that. And I also understand not wanting to add on an additional class for somebody with a full schedule. But in theory, those students don't necessarily need to be taking those classes at school, correct? They could be logging in at home and taking those classes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The idea is trying to come up with the flexibility to allow a student to be successful.
Yeah.
And so there's a variety of ways we might be able to do that with a student.
Okay.
Yeah. Our next grouping is our SEL survey results. And these are you might recall in terms of years past, we've done 3 SEL surveys usually with students. And after getting feedback from our schools, from administrators, from counselors, et cetera, and then also in terms of the fact that there is a state-required, the California Healthy Kids Survey that's also administered every year, we did pare back the SEL surveys to 2 per year rather than 3. And so those surveys were done in the fall and then in the early spring, or might we actually call that winter, because of the fact that staff and faculty on campus wanted to be able to make sure that they could react within a certain amount of time by getting that data. So if we waited and did a survey in the fall and then waited all the way to the end of the year, we might get feedback that we would want to intervene with, and we're at the end of the school year. Also, historically, the SEL survey at the end of the year was the lowest in terms of participation rate by students. So what you're looking at here in terms of the core competencies, this is all put out by Castle, is the social awareness, the self-management, self-awareness, responsible decision-making, and relationship skills. And what you're looking at here is the percentage of a favorable response. So in the fall of 2023 or the winter 2024, students, 54% gave a favorable answer in terms of, how am I doing in terms of my own social awareness, or 59% gave a favorable response in terms of how am I doing in terms of my own self-management, et cetera. And then the darker graph obviously refers to the same data question asked in the winter, which I believe was given at the very end of January, the first week of February is when those surveys were given. So our glows and our grows, The self-awareness and social awareness did increase. Also, we had increased Panorama usage in terms of total minutes, student success, et cetera. We do think that cutting down to the 2 surveys definitely had a positive impact in terms of kids completing the survey and willingness to participate in it. We're also increasing our professional development, working on more training of the trainers, and then also working on PD around the level 1 through 3 beginners, intermediate, and advanced. It's also important to note in terms of students, the kindergarten through 2nd or 3rd grade is done through a teacher asking the students questions and then marking the answers down. And then it's after that that the students actually fill out the survey themselves. But those earliest grades, the teachers actually fill out the survey in terms of the student responses. Grows, our secondary students don't feel as connected. There's additional information where you can click on the link and you'll see that data. And then also another grow is trying to work in terms of increasing diversity and inclusion. Student perceptions on diversity and inclusion did decline. And so that's an area that we really want to focus on in terms of this coming school year and into the future. Attendance rates and chronic absences. This one, some really positive, and we've shared this since last year. We've really been trending in the correct direction with this area of focus. Obviously, we want our year attendance to go up, and we want our chronic absenteeism to go down. And we've really been making some great strides. We just now are completing the back to school challenge. So all of our faculties and staffs are talking that up about students. A lot of our offices are really pouring into the work around that in terms of encouraging students to really set that behavior early in the year, if you will, in terms of making sure that school and attendance is a priority. We basically saw increases and improvements in every single group except for our foster youth. And so this year we did allocate more resources, some more personnel to our foster kids, working with Dr. Peace. And there's some things that we'll be doing throughout the year to really focus on our foster group, because again, as a subgroup, it's the only group that we did not see improvement in. So we really want to focus on them. In terms of attendance and absenteeism, we are pretty much head and shoulders above all districts that are like us or the districts in terms of our surrounding areas. We really are the leaders right now in terms of making gains in terms of our attendance and decreasing our absentee rates. I wanted to call out Michael Rosas at Mills Middle School, Bree Malone at Cordova High School, and Monica De Leon at Mitchell Middle School as our 3 attendance technicians who are, again, really putting the work in terms of connecting with families and really helping families and our students understand the importance of being in the school. But then also just a shout out to all the clerks throughout the district. This really is a team effort, and a lot of our folks are spending a lot of time in terms of everything from simply a phone call home, hey, David's not at school today, we're just checking in and see what's going on, to actually 2 or 3 of our staff members going out to the house and doing a home visit. So you got a plethora of a lot of people really pitching in and working hard on this, and we really want to focus in and thank them for all that hard work, because it is paying off. Flows and grows, district-wide attendance has increased every grade level, and training for classified staff to support student attendance has also increased. We still have a disproportionate chronic absenteeism rate in terms of specific student groups, and we are still needing to increase our focus on early intervention. So all that work, as always, none of this really goes away, right? The work always continues. Okay, and finally, our behavior. Again, the things we just talked about in terms of students being successful in academics, the attendance rates, and then our, really focusing on and trying to help students in terms of their SEL growth. All of those things kind of end up here in terms of whether or not we're making gains in terms of our student behaviors and students that are not in class because of those behaviors. And we actually are, again, making some real gains here. One of the things that's a little bit interesting and maybe a little bit sad is if you look at 2022 to 23 and then 23 to 24, you see we went down a little bit. We actually would have gone down quite a bit more because our secondary rates are really coming down. And when I said it's a little bit sad, or a new dynamic that has kind of expressed itself since coming back from COVID, is just the skyrocketing rate of really disturbing behaviors in our youngest students, kindergarten through 2nd grade. And so behaviors that we hadn't seen in years prior, and stuff that it basically ends up in terms of suspending a 2nd grader, which is just something that didn't happen very often previously. So in terms of our focus as we're moving forward, we're really focusing on our K-2 grades in terms of interventions, in terms of working with students, families, again, in terms of SEL, work with kids, just because that drop from 3.10 to 3.0 would have been much larger if it wasn't for the youngest grades, because our secondary grades, we really saw some improvement in terms of suspensions and behaviors.
Dr. Huber,
Yeah,
I'm
go ahead.
curious if you know, is that kind of consistent with other colleagues you've talked with in other districts?
Yeah, it's actually a nationwide trend, and everyone's obviously Mr. Meyer isn't here today, but I could get more information. But from what I've been hearing in terms of my colleagues, and then just in terms of my interactions and work with Mr. Meyer, this is something that's being seen everywhere, and everyone's kind of, again, a second grade teacher might not be as equipped or used to dealing with those kind of behaviors as a middle school teacher would have been if we had gone back in time 10 years, right? And so the things we would have seen basically in middle school or higher have really now transferred to, the elementary levels. Also, in terms of similar districts, the districts around us, our suspension rates are significantly lower. So just like the attendance, we are, again, kind of the leaders in terms of the work we've been doing. We've done work through Solution Tree and the Hannigans. I think we're in our third year of that now in terms of a real focus. We've done responsive classroom. There's a whole bunch of different things we're doing in terms of trying to really engage kids and manage the classroom environment in such a way that kids can express themselves, they can work in terms of their own coping strategies, et cetera. The whole point being we don't want kids out of the classroom. If kids are out of the classroom, whether because it's attendance or a behavior issue, instruction's being missed and that student is falling behind. So again, a lot of great things in terms of the work that we're doing, a lot of positive areas that we're real excited about. But as I said earlier, as always, the work really continues. There's still a lot of work for us to do in terms of moving forward. And that concludes the presentation.
Okay, well, thank you so much. This is just an information item, but definitely would take any questions or comments from the board. I'm not seeing any. Typically, on an information item, we wouldn't take public comment. We do have one, unless there's an objection from the board. I'll let Mr. Smith come up and make a comment.
Thank you for taking my comment on this. I think my perspective might help a little. And this is for the summer school. Through all the stuff going on with Faith, I spent over a year trying to find solutions. What can I do so when I stand in front of a judge and they question my decision, I can give a decision that's in the best interest of the child. And so we've gone to more than 10 schools, visits, looking at their programs, and Faith is passionate about jazz, whether jazz band, jazz choir, all the way over to Davis. I've even considered moving back to LA. And we settled with Visions. I teach privately, and I've had students with Visions. I had a mother come in unscheduled, screaming that I do a makeup for her 3 weeks in a row, no call, no show. So I was hesitant about going with Visions, but I really vetted them. And the thing that sold me on them was that Faith can go to Folsom Lake or ARC and take English there or trigonometry like she did in the summer and get high school credit. So this district doesn't allow that. So if you remove summer school, which that could be an option based on some of the stuff you say, if a student can only get a C. But especially like with Folsom High, you have a lot of overachieving students. Giving them that option that they can go take 4 classes at a college, so long as maybe a waiver is signed that there can be work submitted. The way Visions do it, they have, what is that class called? They have a specific class, and in that class, she submits her college tests and things like that, so they can monitor her progress. But that could be a solution to help with retention, because now you can, if some students are here that can prove that they can handle a college class, then maybe that attention with teachers can be brought on kids who are falling behind. Just a thought, just a thought. I haven't done a whole lot of research, maybe on a wider scale, but
That's good. Thank you, Mr. Smith. All right.
Just a follow-up comment
Please,
on
yeah.
that. I know that, Mr. Swanson, you're working super hard and collaboratively with the colleges in terms of creating that dual enrollment opportunity and growing that. I'm a huge fan of it. I do think that our district could expand our opportunities in that dual enrollment and be a great resource, especially with summer schools and things like that. But I know that that was one of your very first meetings, and so so I'm glad to have that collaboration really kind of taking off right when you started. So
Thank you.
Thanks. Good. If there's no other comments, then we'll move on. Dr. Greer, thank you for the presentation, and it's, you give that list of names, and it's humbling knowing how many people are working for our students and behind this. So thank you for the work you're doing and your team is doing on this. And yeah, I would say in the 3 or 4 years that I've been coming to these meetings up here, it's incredible the work that you've done and the way that we've been using data, not just to look at data, but to tell a story of what's happening with our students. So definitely appreciate that. Thank you. Moves us on to item 15, Superintendent's Report. Mr. Swanson.
Absolutely. Thank you, President Hui and Board. I'm going to start off my comments today talking about some really encouraging and exciting data happening around us. I know I mentioned at our last board meeting that our enrollment was potentially over 22,000, but I didn't want to officially. So we do have the official numbers. If we include our preschool programs, FCUSD is at 22,208 students, which is up 781 students from this exact point last year. So we are a growing district in the state of California, which is not normal, and it's a testament to, I think, what you were just alluding to, President Hui, the hard work of our community and how we really start with kids and aim to serve them. So that's really, it's an exciting time to be FCUSD. Up next, I wanted to share that through the Community Schools Initiative and in collaboration with UCD, Go Aggies, on August 24th, 116 students received their free sports physical. Every parent was connected with during that time, and each of them stated that this opportunity to receive a free sports physical made it possible for their student athlete to participate in sports. And as I talked to the team about all students feeling seen, safe, included, and connected, we know we have academics and artists and athletes and social justice warriors out there. This was an opportunity for 116 of our students to feel more connected to their school experience. So really impressed by the work there. Be remiss if I didn't mention that the Cordova Lancer football team won their second football game this Friday, and now they're 2-0. But that win marks 400 for in the school's history, which is quite a number and speaks to the legacy of that community and their support of their students engaging in extracurricular activities. So congratulations to the Lancers. Kanan, you stole my thunder on this one. So we have 33 of our schools, and you heard Kanan mention this. They're honored with an award from the California PBIS program. So this is up from 4 schools last year. So to go from 4 to 33 in a year, based on the tiered fidelity inventory called the TFI, it's really tough to do. This is scored by an external entity, not ourselves. And as a former high school principal, it is really hard to medal because you get a bronze, a silver, there may be a platinum as well, but gold has a platinum? There is a platinum, yeah. So I just want to make sure to emphasize that it's actually really, really tough to medal. So the medaling is one thing and a representation of the hard work that everyone's doing highlighting Kate Hazarian, Kelly Samuelson, Kevin Smith, and the climate facilitator teams. But I really want to speak briefly to the fact that when we're medaling at our schools, that means schools, our students are having experiences that are more restorative. They're having experiences where the expectations of them are really clear, therefore increasing their safety and understanding the expectations of them at school. PBIS really talks about common language. We teach explicit lessons about how their behavior should show up in different parts of the school, the hallways, the classroom, the gym, on the bus. It's really an explicit approach. And then if you pay attention to the actual acronym, it's positive behavioral supports. The quickest way I can sum that up is there's two ways to address a young person that might be being unsafe by running. And then it's just very nuanced by saying, please walk versus don't run, right? And so PBIS really focuses on how do we reinforce the positive behaviors rather than approaching and support or the lack of support from a deficit mindset and how we communicate with our students. So I just wanted to say kudos to the hard work out there, and just know that our students are benefiting for all the hard work that the adults are pouring into this, specifically climate facilitator teams and all of our teachers. So I am 2/3 through my first 100 days on the Listen and Learn tour. I've had an amazing, so many amazing experiences with community members. And that happened a lot in July and August, but right now I'm having experiences in our schools. I was at Canaan School last week, and so I'm spending time checking in with principals around the same 5 questions and then walking classrooms. It is a joy. I was in a kindergarten classroom yesterday, and I'll just share for the humor of the board. It was a post-lunch activity, and it was an activity where a student would share something that they liked, and then you would stand up and say, just like me, if that was something that you were interested in. And so I was in there, and I'm like, I'm in, like kindergarten. So I'm squatting down like all the kindergartners. And the first student says, I like chocolate cupcakes. And that was really exciting for me. And I jumped up and shouted, just like me, way louder than any 5-year-old did in that classroom. It is on film because Angela's team was out there, so we may have evidence of that. But I just wanted to reinforce for this board and the community that the hard work and dedication and love shown by our teachers to our students is profound. I'm seeing it in every visit I have. And I want to say that the highlight of, or the common denominator that I'm in my principal interviews, in my community interviews, is that the strength in FCUSD is in the people. And I really feel that in my second, third month now, is that the people in this system truly care for each other and very consistently start with kids. And I just want to especially thank the executive cabinet who you've seen most present today. So Catherine, Jim, Sean, and Dawn. Sean, thank you so much for coming up to the lectern today. Really appreciate that. But their support for me being new to the district and new to the community, they're continuing to start with kids, and their amazing hard work and support of their teams. I just wanted to say, you guys all always get up and thank your teams, but I just wanted to thank the team that supports me. Thank you so much for all your work for our kids. It really matters. And so that is my superintendent's report for today.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. It takes us to board member reports. We'll start with our student board members. Ms. George.
So I don't have a lot to say, but Van and I went to a cell phone policy hearing and a social media hearing sometime last week with the California superintendent and some legislators. I'm really excited for our first SAB meeting, which is coming up at Cordova High, and I'm really excited that it's not at Cordova Lane and we get to see all the different schools. And I know that's how they did it like a few years ago, so I'm really excited that that's back. And this week I was able to have a conversation with Faith, and I was allowed to talk to her father for a little bit and really hear what they had to say. And I'm glad to be able to represent Folsom and do what I can to help. So yeah, that's all I have.
Appreciate it. Mr. Merrill.
Hello. Just to reiterate what Mia said, we were invited by NSBMA to a cell phone hearing at the Capitol in the Legislative Office Building. We were talking to State Superintendent Tony Thurmond about the 2 cell phone policy bills. One of them was about social media specifically by Senator Henry Stern, and then one of them about cell phones, like the actual physical object cell phones, by former board member Josh Hoover here. So we talked to Josh Hoover, and we talked to Thurmond about the pros and cons and like our worries about it from a student's perspective. I specifically talked about the teacher-student relationship and how this bill could possibly negatively impact that, and student electronic privacy and making sure that students are still protected under Cal ECPA. And I clarified that with Assemblyman Hoover, where he said they changed the language to make sure explicitly that teachers can't take the phone and look through it and stuff like that, which would be against the electronic something privacy rights. Yeah, so we shared our own experiences about the bill with Mia and another student board member, and then there was a superintendent there from San Mateo, and then a student from San Mateo. So it was really cool. We got to learn a bunch of different perspectives. Like San Mateo, they've had the phone policy like that we have for like 2 years, I want to say. So they were saying how it's gone well. And yeah, we learned more about the bills being passed in like the specific language, and I am now less worried of a cell phone restriction in schools now. Yes. And you stole my thunder. I was going to congratulate the football team on their 2-0 undefeated win streak. We have a football game coming up tomorrow night. I'm very excited for that. It's beach theme, so if you guys want to come, and it's beach theme, so wear your swim trunks. I'm sure it'll be very hot. That'll be it. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Brown. I'm so glad you guys got to go participate in some of those discussions too and represent us. Thank you for doing that. Ms. Lefthouse.
Hopefully Angela is going to that, to capture these gentlemen up here in their swim trunks. I don't have too much of a report. However, we had the Folsom 2x2 meeting this morning, and I'm actually this is the first time I've attended the meeting. And I'm hopeful that we're moving more in a direction of collaboration with the city. I've felt for a very long time, living here, going to school here, and then moving back here, I've felt that there's a very disjointed communication between the city and the school systems, or everybody was operating very well separately, but never really having those true conversations of how they can start working together. And I think that they're starting to see success in things that they have done together, which is kind of pushing the direction to continue those conversations. So, and looking at it more as one team rather than two separate entities. So I am excited to see what that growing collaboration looks like. That's all.
Thank you. Ms. Larrett.
So as part of the facilities committee, I went down to Clovis with some of our staff, and we visited a couple schools that were newer-ish builds that were shared spine facilities between middle school and high school. So a lot of food for thought visiting those sites. And so I look forward to our upcoming conversations on facilities and kind of how we can kind of evaluate what those look like as we start planning for our future new schools, of what we liked, what we didn't feel like would be great for FCUSD. So, but it was nice to be able to kind of at least go and see what a campus style versus a non-campus style school looks like, so that we can make the best decisions as we move forward. So that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Reed.
Yes, I was at the meeting, the 2x2 meeting with Kara this morning as well. Just for the benefit of the board, the subject matters that were discussed, there was an update on SFID 3 and SFID 4 for the city council members that were in attendance and the city partners. We talked a little bit about the Vista del Lago student parking issue on Caversham Way and some of the changes that were made to deter that. The city also mentioned that there is a petition that could potentially be filled out by the residents if they so chose, and I think directed the superintendent to where to find that for future dialogue with the families that are concerned about the parking up there. There is just a quick presentation on the anti-fentanyl toolbox, an update on the Folsom High School fence project, which is different than the campus fencing that we know that they're in the process of doing. The city is going to be installing a 5-foot fence in the median on Iron Point in front of Folsom High School because there's been a number of incidents of students running across Iron Point rather than going to one of the controlled lights. So that 5-foot fence is to encourage the use of the controlled lights. And then, let's see, we also had discussion on the Alder Creek sidewalk and crosswalk situation where we needed to get some additional sidewalks installed and crosswalks to allow for safe travel from the community to Alder Creek Elementary School. And then finally, there was a quick discussion regarding the motorized scooters and cycle enforcement, and then that was the meeting. On any of these, by the way, obviously, if anybody has any topics for a 2x2, whether it's for the city of Folsom, city of Rancho Cordova, the Parks, Cordova Parks Department, what else do we have a 2x2 on? I think those are the three, right? Any of this board members are welcome to add items for future agendas as well.
Thank you. Mr. Clark.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Just want to start off as I have started my visits. So I want to thank Cordova Gardens Academy of Art and Science, Williamson, Peter J. Shields, Riverview STEM. I went the same day you did. Yeah, I just missed you, actually. Mitchell Mills, Cordova Meadows, White Rock, and Cordova. I want to thank them for their hospitality, allowing me to visit the classrooms and hang out with the kids and play with our TK students at White Rock. That was fun. I'll probably be out about next week. We'll be visiting some Folsom schools. Can't count on me. I think you're on my calendar the week after, but I will be out there. Van, I'm glad that you had an opportunity to meet with Tony. Our CSBA board will be meeting with him on the 28th. And I think cell phone policies is one of the things that'll be discussed on that. The superintendent, I want to thank you and Dr. Peace and the other team for meeting with NAPAC and possibly finding them a home. I believe that there were a couple of schools that they will be looking at. So I'm kind of interested to see how that works out. Other than that, I mean, you're bringing some mojo to these meetings. We're getting out early, no requests for extensions, so it's all good. I'm getting past my bedtime, so that's it for me.
All right, thank you, Mr. Clark. I'll just very quickly make one comment. It's fairly self-serving for the board, but I just did want to appreciate and thank the board for the discussion tonight, particularly around the jazz choir field trip. So, Mr. Clark, thanks for kind of leading us in that. Mr. Smith, thanks for bringing that to our attention. I think we got to a really good place, and hopefully it's a place that works for both the staff and for the board and the community. So much appreciation of that. That brings us to item 17, advanced planning. Our next board meeting is on September 19th. Also want to remind the board there's a special board study session on September 25th, which is a Wednesday night at 5 p.m. You've got the 12-month board calendar there in front of you for you to check out, which shows what items we'll be discussing. And then item C, suggested future agenda items. I want to make a reminder that we did, I believe, add one item to this tonight, which is bringing back the discussion at the next board meeting around the jazz field trip. Are there any other suggested future agenda items from any board members? All right, I'm not hearing any, so then I'll move us on to, we're on to item 18, which is recess closed session. We did finish up all of our business in the first closed session, so we will cruise all the way down to item 22, adjournment. Unless there's any objection from the board, we will adjourn.
Can we adjourn in memory of the 4 individuals who were killed in Georgia at the school shooting?
Yeah, we will adjourn in memory of the 4 individuals from Georgia. Thank you, Mr. Reed, for the suggestion. We are adjourned.